Hi everyone, welcome to Binance Off the Chart conference. I'm Rachel-Rose O'Leary. I'm a privacy researcher and contributor for CoinDesk and The Defiant. So I'm really happy to welcome you to this panel, which is called Maintaining User Privacy and Shielding User Data. I'm here with a really interesting selection of guests, which I think all represent different niches within the crypto ecosystem. So we have Brendan Eich, the CEO and co-founder of Brave, and the creator of JavaScript, Peter DeMeo, head of market development of IBM Systems Digital Assets, and Harry Halpin, the CEO of MixNet platform New Technologies. So we have a really interesting mix of companies here, and I think they're going to give us a unique insight into some of the most cutting-edge solutions in blockchain today. So let's get started. First, I'd like to hear from all of you. So as I'm sure most of the audience know, the blockchain industry has a privacy problem. So I'd like to know how each of your individual projects aim to address this. So Brendan, if we'd like to start off with you, and then we can go to Peter and then Harry after that, if that works.
Sure. So with Brave and the basic attention token, we're taking a look at privacy from not only the blockchain point of view, but also the browser perspective, because there's still a lot of user privacy concerns around browsing. Notoriously, Chrome, when you're logged into any Google account, will track you in all your browsing for the benefit of Google. And many people still don't know this, though it was covered first by ProPublica, I believe, in 2016. So in Brave, that's not the case. We can use the browser as endpoint software to protect your data where it originates on your device. That's where all your valuable navigations and search queries and so on happen. Then the challenge becomes using cryptographic protocols, including blockchain, to realize user value at the user's discretion with their consent without giving away anything identifiable, anything linkable to make a fingerprint or identifier for the user. And that's where we focused our efforts in Brave with the basic attention token, not only on Ethereum, as you say, public blockchains are not good for privacy per se, but also off-chain. We've been doing research with multi-party computing and distributed key generation, things like that. So we're working on a system that goes from end to end, from where your browser runs on your own trusted hardware, let's hope, all the way to the blockchain.
Great, I'll take it from there. Thanks, Brendan. I just want to let you know that I'm a proud Brave and Bat aficionado. So it's a great project. IBM, on our side, we are one layer down in terms of the hardware. And when you just mentioned sort of hardware-based mechanisms to help encryption, we're all about that. In particular, our projects are around trusted execution environments. You mentioned secure multi-party computation, also differential privacy, and in fact, homomorphic encryption. All of these can be, used for different use cases and in fact combined in certain ways, right? Trusted execution environments, for example, they perform isolation for your code and your data, and they can, safeguard secrets. There's different chip architectures for that. There's Intel with their software guard extensions, which we've heard a lot about. ARM has its trust zone, and maybe few people have any knowledge about what IBM's doing, but we have secure execution. It's manifested in a product named the HyperProtect family or services, which is including crypto, virtual servers, databases as a service, etc., as well as a Kubernetes service forthcoming. And there are different trade-offs with each of these things, but I think when it comes to at least at the enterprise level, being able to protect everything and not necessarily worry about picking and choosing what to protect, because when you start to you get it set once and then you start to combine different things together, it sort of changes that parameters, and all of a sudden you might have some data exfiltration or leaking going on, and that doesn't really help, does it? On the secure multi-party front, as the whole idea there is privacy, preserving computation with two more parties, right? Where in the case of blockchain, with a lot of companies like Unbound Tech and ShardX and Fireblocks and so forth, they are using this technology to have distributed key material for signing and being able to sign transactions without ever reconstituting the key physically, right? And so we find that's really good, and it actually works a lot better when you run it inside of a trusted execution environment, because all software crypto can only go so far, right? I mean, that's what the FIPS certifications are. And then finally, we have differential privacy homomorphic encryption. I'll talk a little bit maybe about if I have an opportunity later, but just as an example, for differential privacy, it just basically uses mathematical noise to preserve individuals' privacy and confidentiality, while allowing, in the case of, let's say, the US Census in 2020, for population statistics to be observed, okay? So for example, if you're, my age is, I just turned 52, happy birthday to myself. But if I want to obfuscate that information, I can pick like a random number, let's say ±7, and then combine that. And so if you were able to determine my age, you don't have to have a range between like 25, well, whatever, 7 plus or 7 minus. So there's a little bit of noise to protect it. And this year, for the, as I mentioned, the 2020 census, we're basically keeping, or I should say, keeping the responses of all the US citizens confidential when we're making that data sets available to be used by industry and actually government as well. So there's a few projects we have. I'll cover a homomorphic later, sensitive to the time.
Yeah, so I'm Harry Halpin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of NIM Technologies, and we're what's called a network level privacy project. So Brendan has a browser, and that browser defends your application level privacy when you're browsing the internet, and you can run this browser on trusted hardware or do computations on hardware of your choice. But the fact of the matter is, every time you send a TCP/IP or UDP packet, anytime you send a packet over the internet, the IP address on that packet is revealed. So you can use software like Tor or VPN to help stop adversaries like Chainalysis or the NSA or cyber criminals from discovering your IP address and then locating out who you are when you're doing, for example, a Bitcoin or whatever transaction. However, a very powerful adversary can just watch the network's data flowing in and out, and they can figure out the timing, the sort of volume, and the patterns of internet traffic that you are sending. So what a mix that does is we basically take those individual packets, we encrypt them, and we shuffle them. That's mixing. And then we send them out. And that really provides resistance against even what we call global passive adversaries that can watch the entire network. So we're one level below chain. So even if you use technology such as Zcash, shielded transactions, or Monero ring signatures to hide some on-chain data, the network level is still going to leak your identity and the kind of transaction data. So we really do recommend people look into using our technology and mixed networks in general to basically defend their privacy on the network level. And if you use our technology in combination with, say, Brave, you get something which we call full stack privacy or holistic privacy, where you can really defend all levels of your data from outside surveillance. We're a very proud graduate of the first Binance incubator back in 2018.
Great. Thank you all so much. That was really interesting to hear about. And I like how each of your projects is approaching a different layer of the privacy problem. And together with the network layer, application, and the hardware layer, we're approaching a full stack, or as Harry called it, a holistic privacy model. So I want to talk about the title of this panel, which is that privacy is mission critical. I want to ask all of you, why is privacy mission critical? Why is not having privacy a bad thing? And what can having privacy also bring to the crypto industry? So we'll go around again, starting with Brendan. Thanks.
Well, as I mentioned, people realized starting around 2016 that browsers, and notably Chrome is the biggest, were captured by advertising technology companies, or search ad companies, let's call them. And it wasn't just a concern about economics, so that's part of it. It was, could advertisers be doing things to actually maliciously target you? Could some stalker do something, or some troll do something bad to you? Could malvertisers put ransomware into ads and buy very inexpensive ad slots and make a profit in spite of paying for those ad slots by getting the payload for the ransomware exploit kit loader onto your PC. And this actually happened when we first launched in beta in 2016 in March. There was ransomware on the front of the New York Times. Now, I guarantee you the New York Times does not do direct ad sales to a ransomware vendor. It was all done through ad exchanges, notably Google's. So there's incredible indirection. This also manifests as fraud, which hurts publishers. So we see an ecosystem problem here that needs solving. And privacy is how this manifests to users, or the loss of privacy. But there's a deeper, I think, social problem and an ecological problem here. And so by defending yourself as a user and defending your privacy, you can protect yourself from threats like malware. The next step, though, is if you're protecting yourself, how do publishers who are relying on ad tech to some extent for whatever revenue is left in the pie tin after all the intermediaries have taken their cuts, how do publishers make themselves whole? And that's why from the beginning, Brave took on the mission of not only protecting users through blocking tracking, principally blocking bad JavaScripts, my bad millennial, from 1995, but also letting users choose to participate in a cryptocurrency-based system of rewarding themselves if they choose to take private ads matched only on their device in the browser and cryptographically confirmed, and then give back cryptocurrency to their favorite sites, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, creators, even Twitter account holders and Reddit account holders. We have Vimeo and other platforms, GitHub too. So now we have a robust way for private, I'd say up to three-party commerce. And that means that there's a tricky economic revenue split going on here. You have to be willing to take advertising revenue and split it into two pieces, one for the user and one for Brave perhaps, or one for the publisher, maybe even three pieces, where there's a publisher piece, a Brave piece, and a user piece. And we can do this. We mentioned MPC. I was glad to hear Peter talk about partial homomorphic encryption. We use additive PHE. In our latest research work, we're building a system that is self-verifiable to the advertiser. So there's no central trusted counterparty. And so privacy plays an important role here, not just for the user, but for advertisers and publishers. They want to keep their reporting and their sort of marketing or their publisher performance data private to themselves. They don't want it to be arbitraged across the Google Ad Exchange, which has been a real problem. The sort of ad tech superpowers have created a non-level playing field where if you're using programmatic advertising, others can swoop in and steal your audience cheaply. That's how ad fraudsters do it, and malware vendors can partake of this too. So you can end up starting with a good proposition, making some good revenue, and month by month, your revenue goes down, your audience gets stolen away, and they're being served ads on bad sites. This is a very deep social problem. I'm sure we could talk about much longer, but privacy is not just an individual, or mundane concern. It's a big concern. People even manifest this in political concerns about companies like Facebook. So we take this as a systems problem and try to solve it at the browser layer. We also do have Tor integrated as an option as desktop Brave. Wanted to mention that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Harry can do, because that approach that he mentioned, the full stack approach, is very attractive.
Thanks, Brendan. When we think about new business models that are created out of having privacy, you can take them from, if you will, the traditional side or the crypto side. For example, on the crypto side, working with a number of large banks on tokenizing debt. And they would, obviously start off with a permissioned private blockchain, but that's not the ultimate goal. At the same time, pure play public chains don't have the necessary encryption available to them today that would make the counterparties on these kinds of transactions comfortable, right? And so there is a need, I think, to blend these different privacy technologies and techniques in a way to unlock a lot of new kinds of business. I mean, tokenization, of course, everyone talks about it, but there's a lot of things that are holding it back, right? And the use case is part of it, but I think it's also around privacy and usable encryption for these kinds of things. Maybe a non-blockchain example would be if you have you're an airline and you want to create a better experience, create new promotions. You have, you know where the person's going because you dropped them off at at an airport, but maybe you want to collect information on the hotel or the restaurants or entertainment venues, and do so in a way that you're not, leaking or providing potentially competing chains with, valuable client or customer information. And likewise, they don't want to do the same either, right? And then, again, getting back to homomorphic encryption, if we can all essentially work on the intersection of those data without giving away the sources of those data, then these kinds of models can be monetized. Whereas today, quite frankly, it's a bit of a not really possible. And I totally agree in your point about like the Googles and Facebooks and so forth. I mean, think about it. If you want to use your smartphone to go to work and find a new way to avoid traffic, right, and maybe find a coffee shop if it's really bad, you're giving all that information away. It's getting monetized, and there's a good fair part of the generation out there using social media that's totally fine with that, right? But I think that, perhaps with different technologies, different techniques, you don't have to necessarily trade off all of this information about your intent and, what you're doing, when you're doing it and so forth, which could be collected, right, and triangulated, and still, get the benefit of the services that you're interested in consuming.
Yeah, and I'll just try to be very quick. The essential vision of Bitcoin is to promote human freedom, to promote human autonomy over their financial transactions. But what we really need, and which we're all, myself and Brendan and other folks are all providing, essentially is how to promote our freedom and autonomy over all aspects of our digital lives, including every time we touch the internet, making sure that we can't be recorded. And it's not just advertisers. This technology, if you are under surveillance, it can be a matter of life or death. People have discovered this in places like Syria. People are discovering this in Hong Kong, and you never know what the next government we may have in Europe and the United States may be, and what will happen in the future. So I think it's privacy is a fundamental safeguard, and the surveillance-based advertising regimes are not producing very much innovation. If you look at Google, what has Google done recently? You have no interesting new products for years. It seems that they're becoming not very innovative. And if you imagine a world where we had technologies that defend our privacy and defend our freedom, we can imagine whole different and new kinds of technology which can promote our kind of well-being through this collective public good, which we call privacy. And that may lead to much more innovation than the current, what I would call stagnation that we're seeing in Silicon Valley. So that's it. Rachel, maybe we should end up pretty soon.
Yeah, thanks. That was really nice. Interesting perspectives from all of you, all of them quite different. And I think everyone is convinced from listening to you that there's a pressing need for these technologies. So we only have 5 minutes left. I think we have a time for one very quick question. If you can all just, give a quick answer to this. I'd like to know, given that there's such a need for these technologies that you're creating, what's the current status of the projects? When are we going to have the level of privacy for the kind of end user that is necessary in the way that you've described?
So Brave believes in releasing early and often. This is the motto of Netscape from the early days. Jamie Zawinski wrote about it very well. Once you get something in front of users that they like, you can find the right path rather than having to aim 5 years out and miss the target and get lost in hyperspace. So we have users. We have over 15 million users monthly active. We have over 5.3 million daily active users. We have, I think, 2.5 million now actively engaged over 30 days with the basic attention token platform, which is optional. If you use Brave, you're not compelled to use it. You can choose to use it. And just by using Brave, you're protecting your data. But with the basic attention token, you're able to transact in this emerging system of tokenization that Peter mentioned. And that's where you definitely need not only blockchain, but advanced cryptographic protocols to protect yourself, to have sort of end party deals that don't involve any counterparty risk or centralization. So we're working on decentralizing all the pieces, because as you start engaging in this system, as we have by shipping early, you immediately run into not only businesses that are working in the old model, but regulators who are thinking in the old way. And so you have to sort of thread the needle there, which we've done. But as we push on and as the blockchains evolve, I think we're finding that everything is lining up. And it was great to hear Peter talk about fintech, I would say, or banks and debt, because I believe there's sort of a correspondence between these systems. Ad tech is kind of like a form of debt, and I mentioned arbitrage in the system built in, which benefits the big platforms, which are monopolies, so they do impose deadweight losses. As Harry mentioned, these are destructive of innovation. These are just stagnating everything. Innovation not only at Google, which there could be a lot of innovation elsewhere, but if people can't realize the economic value they should from their own data, then they won't have the resources to innovate either. So we're committed to this long-term vision I think we all share. And we're making progress month by month as we grow.
Thanks, Brendan. From an IBM perspective, we have our trusted execution technology on premise and on the cloud. And so anybody that's interested in protecting their hardware, their applications and their data, please see us. But another thing that we're working on too, though, is really quantum safe technology. And both from the perspective of implementing lattice curves, which we have already done in our hardware, as well as incorporating those kind of protections in our homomorphic encryption, which is also coming out. I actually can't necessarily say when, but let's just say it's coming. And so, all of this provides us the ability to offer something that other cloud providers cannot. And this is this concept of operational versus technical assurance. Operational assurance simply means this: we have policies and procedures in place. As administrators of cloud provider X, we promise not to steal your stuff. But if we're offered, or if we were given or mandated a law enforcement order or request, we could honor it because we do have access, right? On the IBM side, on the IBM Cloud and the HyperProtect family, which is what I work with, we have what's called technical assurance, and we provide only the end user the ability to access their content. So IBM administrators, developers, whomever, no access any of the time. Even our memory dumps are encrypted, and so. It's a whole area of making sure that only the right people have access to their content and not anybody else, especially trusted administrators, including developers. By the way, we have a way to deploy applications so that not only do we know what was deployed, but we can have it fully audited, inclusive of business processes. To your point, Brendan, about regulated industries, what they care about is how do I take a process and make it much more efficient using DLT? And so we protect all of that kind of stuff. Over to you.
Yeah, and we're currently at what we would call testnet. We have a running mixed node. You can easily run yourself. Probably this is the first running mixnet since the early 2000s, late 90s, mixed minion. So our mixnet works today. We're currently adding support for different protocols. SOX 5, it's under development, so this should allow easy integration with wallets and browsers. We'll see a few of those, at least on the wallet side, launching later in the month. And we're currently working on our incentive system, which will also hopefully launch by, I would say, 2 or 3 months. And we would love for more people to get involved, because with a mixed network, you can actually, it's a bit like mining. You can actually, what we're hoping is that people can actually make enough money to both cover the expenses, but also to essentially make a profit by essentially helping preserve this public collective good of privacy by turning your machine on and essentially allowing your machine to mix packets for other people. And I'm very excited about what the future will hold with all of our partners and hopefully with you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, everyone. We got to wrap this up, but thanks very much for joining us. And thanks also to the audience for listening. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the Binance conference. Bye.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.